Thank you for returning.
I am so happy to be here. I love this show, first of all, like Omni, and it reminds me of your son, but it's just such a delight to every time show up on your show and just be myself and do a chit chat with you. And it ends up being so fun. So thank you so much for having me here.
Absolutely, and be yourself. In fact, just before I was about to hit record and getting ready for this recording, I thought I can chill. It's my returning guest slash friend, and I
Oh,
feel like I can be myself around you.
100%, 100%. Love the show. Love what you do with it. Love how your show impacts the world. And it's just nice to be back and love that your show is absolutely in alignment with who I am. So it's just a great conversation every single time I come in.
And there is absolute alignment. Now, the
Yeah.
theme of this particular podcast series is crafting life's energy for flow. And
Mm.
I believe you are truly in alignment with this topic. And share with the audience that you've now recently further fine tuned your focus as a coach and what that is.
So my story basically starts with I'll give you an example of last year. Last year, I invested in myself big time because as I was pivoting, the coach part comes later. But I've always been a mental health therapist. I've been a mental health therapist for 16 years of my life, and I have all these other added certifications to it. So it's like I know all the things. I truly am a big believer of social, personal and spiritual development. And I truly think that, either like I've been through so much in my life and I help my clients with post traumatic growth. My specialty was trauma, depression, anxiety, relationships, attachment, and somatic healing, nervous system healing. So, what I've found is that doing my own work, it has taught me two things. One, it either we're forced to change because we just come up against our ceiling, and or we can keep raising our ceiling and make the last ceiling our floor and continue to grow and evolve and pivot, because that's what our soul is here to do. So my journey into coaching came into, and it's almost coming full circle at this point in 2024, but it started in 2019. I was going through one of the most difficult times in my relationship. As we know that every relationship at some point when it starts moving into commitment phase, it goes through conflicts, and I was going through a lot of conflicts in my marriage. I almost didn't make it based on my avoidant attachment, where I was like, I should just get divorced, life is so hard. And then I was like, no, I'm going to work through this. I teach this to couples. I get to heal and I get to work through this. And that really felt empowering, and I started working on myself. I was also coming out of postpartum anxiety and all the different things that were happening in my life that was just truly, I had to work through my unworthiness wounds. I had to work through, and am I really, now that I've gone through all these big changes. I had gotten married. My mother-in-law moved in with us. She had MS, so she had disability. And then I had a child the following year. And it was just back to back to back big changes. And in that process, I was raised with people pleasing behavior. So it was like I took care of everybody else and poured out of an empty bucket. And then I just felt so much resentment, and the exact opposite of what not being in or living life from the state of flow looks like, and I really had to look in and figure out something needs to change. And in that interim, as I was scrolling through Instagram one day when I dropped my son off to school, he was 2 years old. I still remember very vividly. And that was my first time on Instagram after being off it forever. Like that was, I created I don't know what inspired me to create that account, but I created it and I was going through it and I saw a friend of friends. She was 30 and she had died by suicide. And that literally was a wake up call for me. Like, wow, I could literally see in her eyes that, wow, this could be me. Like, this is exactly how I feel right now. I feel so lost. I feel lack of purpose. Yes, I'm seeing clients, but I feel burnt out. And I was in a place of just, I literally had to park my car on the side of the road, and I was just like my mascara all over the place, just bawling my eyes out. And then I went to my husband and I thought, this could be me. Like, I need to do something with my life and I need to figure it out, because otherwise I just can't keep living like this. It feel day in and day out, taking care of everybody else and just self-betraying and self-abandoning didn't lead to the greatest things. And then I thought to myself, my private practice is great, but there is something in me, like I need to live in integrity. I need to show up as, I've hit my ceiling. What is my next page? What is my next chapter? And as a result, I started exploring into just taking care of myself first. And I then taking care of myself led to my relationship thriving over the time. I started applying. I was so close to it that I couldn't even see it. It was like almost like we were living like roommates. And I was just like, wow, like we are so lost in this process. So I went back to my drawing board and I was like, okay, who do I want to be? Who am I? What are my values? Who am I now that I'm a mother, I'm a daughter-in-law, I'm a wife, all the things that happen so quickly. And I didn't even get a chance to sort of sit back and reflect. And I did that. And it led into me then pivoting into coaching world, because then 2020 happened and all the things that I had recently worked through in my relationships, in my um, attachment wounding, my fear of rejection, my fear of abandonment, my fear of just how will Avik's life turn out. I have to be constantly present and on, and not, I feel guilty for not for taking care of myself. At this point, I would tell my younger self differently, but at that time, that's what my beliefs were. That's who I showed up as, and I didn't know how to regulate my emotions at the time, how to regulate my nervous system. So it was hard. It was very tough. And then in 2020, it was just like, okay, when pandemic hit, we were like, okay, we are finally in a place where we are not struggling and chasing and just in a very hard place. Like I had manifested the life that we live now today, I would say. But it was just it taught me a lot of lessons. It taught me that when I relinquished control and surrendered, the flow of energy was always going through me as me, and it was available to me. I was just not tapped in because I was so much tapped into the pain, the struggles, the lack of clarity, the confusion, that I didn't know what was happening. And that led to beautiful things, and it led to pivoting, because all the people that would come to me, I'm like, where did we go wrong as a society? Like my private practice was thriving at that point. I had wait list of people. But then I was like, why is it that we are struggling to live as couples in the same household, and in like being not having social connection, struggling with our kids, and all the things that the pandemic brought up in terms of mental health. And thus I was like, I want to help more people. I want to serve more people. I'm called deeply to. I'm grateful that we both work remotely. I'm grateful that we don't have to leave our kid with our nanny. I'm grateful that I have two of my sister-in-laws who now helps us with my mother-in-law. We have basic necessities met. We have food. We are safe. We're healthy. We have the money. So where can we serve? What can we do? How can we help people? How can we, how can I hold space for people to go through some of the same things I went through? And then when I healed it, I was on the other side, but I wanted to walk people through that. So yeah.
What you've expressed and articulated to me sounds like expansion, not only on a metaphysical level, but also on a career level, because we are
100%.
all, I can say for myself, we're
Yeah.
continually growing and evolving, testing along
Yeah.
the way that works. Because last time I spoke to you, um, you had not a different niche, but
Yeah.
a focus that you were still refining upon.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've expanded. Now, what I was joking about before I hit record
Yeah.
was that your focus is on relationships, but it
Yeah.
turns out that solopreneurs may actually be in a relationship. And,
Right.
and I can share for you that the level of stress that one goes through in being an entrepreneur can affect
100%.
multiple areas. And it could be even if you're still working in corporate on a professional level or any other institution, that
Mhm.
work and relationships outside of home
Right.
can affect your relationships at home. And
100%.
then you have to re-evaluate, at least for myself,
Right.
your why. Now, maybe you can
Mm.
share with us, let's zero in on the why of what it means to give your relationship that energy.
I like I said, because the first few years of my marriage, taught me that either pain was going to force me to change or I was going to stay ahead of the pain. And, there's nothing wrong with pain and discomfort. I am all about it because I feel like it helps us grow and expand. But when we get stuck in the suffering of the pain, when we get stuck in the pain, it leads to suffering. And I think that's optional. There are ways to work through the pain to not get stuck in that. And the way it showed up for me in my relationship was it if I didn't, so every year, like I said, now since then, I was like, I was going to stay ahead of my game and work my relationship. So I sat back and I started writing after, like, every year now. Since then, I've made it my ritual where my partner and I sit and literally make a vision list for our relationship. We write down, like, on the scale of 0 to 10, where are we at? And this is what I also teach for relationships, because it's like, as a dating coach, I'm very big on date yourself first, so you are the first relationship you have. If you don't have the greatest relationship with yourself, then it bleeds into your other relationships, no matter what relationship it is, whether it's friendship, your partnership, or romantic relationship, or your other relationships. But for our relationship, that's one of the things that I have made a ritual to do, where it's like, okay, we write down our vision list, like, what on the scale of 0 to 10, where are we at? 10 is like we are exceeding our expectations. Zero being, oh my goodness, like we are really abusing each other. Not even like we should have left the relationship. It's really worse. So I was like, okay, let's sit down and talk about that. And then my biggest thing is like, okay, what is our vision? Like, what are our self-limiting beliefs? Why did we give ourselves the score we did? What are our beliefs around it? What are our emotions around it? What is being at a 10 around it? So having those deeper conversations helps us be in a place of, oh, like, this is what we get to look at. And then not just the vision, but then what actions are we going to put in place? It's like, it's great to have all the vision and all the thought and all the things that we consume, but it's like, how are we implementing and showing up in the relationship is what is more important. So it's like, we have to repair after conflicts. There's so much that goes in a relationship that nobody taught us, right? And it's like those skills. There are skills to date. There are skills to attract emotionally available men. There are skills to, learn emotional intelligence. There are skills to regulate in your relationship based on your attachment styles. So there's so much that goes into a relationship that unfortunately not very many people teach us. Then it's like, when we are running our business, like, my focus tends to be my business also, but it's like, in the beginning of the year, I chart out, like, this is what my business stuff will look like, this is how my parenting will look like, this is how my health will look like, this is how my relationship will look like. And then I focus on different topics every year. Like, some ways, some years it's like parenting and relationship is pretty good, so I'll pick on spirituality, and I'll pick on, another category like money beliefs, finances, investments, all those things, right? So it really depends on. I sit down in December and try to figure out where and how I want to show up in my life, and that leads me to being proactive and, grow as a choice. And when I expand, like, yes, some last year was very hard. I invested big time into myself, and that led to a lot of, like, surrender. My word for last year was surrender, so I did a lot of that. But I had to surrender a lot of control in my relationships, because that was something that I had to work through. So just recognizing where we are, what are some of our inner child parts that needs to be healed, where does our nervous system needs more regulation, because my thing is, like, I live life very intentionally. My brand is called Consciously Living. So consciously healing, consciously creating, and consciously awakening. And it's like, what is my intention for my relationship? And that's like, for a whole year, what is my intention for my relationship every day and weekly? If we don't do intentionally, then we're just asleep through it and unconsciously repeating our same patterns over and over.
You said something that really struck a chord with me, that we're not taught necessarily how to show up for ourselves as a
Yeah.
relationship and
Yeah.
ourselves in relationships. But interesting when you said that at first you need to learn to date yourself, because when
Yeah.
I met Rich,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
over and over attests that we were at the best places in our lives because we were.
Yeah.
I was taking such good care of myself. I was in such
Yeah.
a place. He was aligned. I was aligned, and then we
Yeah.
two people that are aligned that meet, that can just only blossom that relationship.
100%.
So that's also probably true, though, for those who are expanding
Mm.
in, say, their professional life. They're realizing that the energy
Mm.
that they needed to give to these other parts of their lives, like, for example, your own marriage. And
Mm.
the very reason I started Omni Mindfulness is because of my son Omni. But
Ah.
sometimes he'd be standing there trying to give me a hug, and I'm like, "Mommy's busy."
Mommy does get to be busy sometimes. Yes.
But maybe you can touch upon that. That how do you then consciously
Mm,
clear energy without hitting burnout? Because that is something that is so common in
100%.
as an
So,
entrepreneur.
I went through that, right? And that's why I was like, oh my goodness, because I've always had a private practice in different realms, like, so it's just, I grew my private practice in Florida, then I grew it here, and then scaled the coaching business. So it was just like, it did lead to a lot of burnout because I didn't know what the whole, what I was doing as I was uh, scaling was not taking care of myself. I just went into this manufacture what I call manufactured manifesting was I was just so chasing, so like not taking care of myself, so doing, and I was so doing heavy instead of just being trusting, which is how I now show up to the world and taking care of my nervous system before anything, taking care of myself, taking care of my trust with my higher power and my future self, like having so I am very big on whatever like whatever we focus on, wherever the energy is focused is where it expands, right? So it's like back in when I was struggling, all the focus was on, and rightfully so, because my nervous system was not in a secure, safe place, which I had to be. Nobody else could take care of it but me. We Other people's emotions are none of our business, and our emotions are none of other people's business, right? So it's like we have to tend to our nervous system. And burnout means that your nervous system, your body is trying to tell you stop. Otherwise, your symptoms are going to manifest, like the things that you are not taking care of is going to manifest as symptoms. The emotions you're not taking care of are going to manifest as physical symptoms. So somehow, if we don't listen to our body, if we don't tap into our body, if we're not embodied, and if we don't love our body and respect its needs, at some point the body is going to tell us to rest, which is burnout. So I since experiencing those different bouts of burnouts, I'm like, no, I am going to scale my business, but this time it's going to be different. This time I'm going to tend to my nervous system, to myself. Resting is good, and trusting and surrendering, as opposed to just making life happen. And that was very anxiety controlling, like in IFS, there's IFS, it stands for internal family systems. It's parts work, so inner child parts work. And basically in that modality, one of the things that we talk about, it's like there are parts of us that we developed as coping mechanisms early on in life that helped us once, that helped us keep us safe then. But at certain point of our life, as we are expanding, we keep coming up against the edges of those parts, and as a result we self-sabotage. So it's like what control once helped me, at some point when I'm scaling, I can't control people, places, things outside of me all the time, because that leads to my nervous system being always on hypervigilance, always on. So doing all this body work really helped me, because emotions are energy in motion. Body work and emotions work really help me be regulated, be calm, be in a state of flow, and letting life work for me, as opposed to blocking it by not knowing how to manage my fear, by blocking it by not knowing how to manage my I'm not good enough, should I do this, like all this unworthiness, all this shame, all this guilt, all the dense emotions like desiring, attachment emotions that block us from receiving what life wants to manifest through us as itself. And that was a lesson that was I had to learn.
And do you believe that the same modalities that we would use, say, in other facets of our life, maybe
Mm,
outside of relationships,
mm,
those same modalities can help us not only embody the
mm,
experience, but
mm.
also regulate the experience? And
100%.
what I'm trying to say is, like, for I can just see that even within a relationship, if you're feeling stuck or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
tense energy,
Mm,
breath work, even on your own, could
mm.
release some of that anxiety so you show up as a higher vibration for your spouse.
100% for yourself. And then as a result, your spouse feel their aura, their stuff switches. Like that was one of the biggest ways that I shifted. Or when I started embodying the change that I wish to see, I inspired from that place as opposed to trying to control to make him change and be someone that he was not wanting to be in alignment with. Even though it was for his highest good. For example, like he used to smoke. And I'm like, you smoke, you smoke. We decided that once we have a child, you'd not do that, this, that, right? And no matter how much telling him or nagging him or trying to control him about that, and he knew that it was not good for him and all the things, it was just I had to not do spiritual bypass and heal and just accept him for where he was and let the universe, let the energy take care of itself. And it did. Because then I was coming from a place of I would plant a seed like, hey, I saw this article on vaping or FDA approved, or some of your friends did that, what are your thoughts? And I would leave it at that. And then he did a research, and it's like, since then, he hasn't been smoking. So it's like, there are little tiny changes that I manifested in my life, but that led to huge closeness, intimacy, connection between us because I showed up not trying to control and micromanage him, but because I was like, you know what? I accept. I'm compassionate. I am loving. I am going to do my thing and just leave it and trust that it's all going to work out for the highest good of everybody and the greatest joy of everybody. And I trust the universe in trying to make that. Me trying to control was me not trusting the universe.
That is so profound. I feel like that is something that is not necessarily easy though. Like I can
Oh,
see
that took me a whole year, by the way, to figure out, which was my last year. As someone with high functioning anxiety who had all the career and all the other stuff in check, that was hard.
I mean I can just see that even now, like every part of my life is a practice.
Yeah.
And evolving practice. And it
Mm.
requires daily showing up. And it could be that even now, for the last 3, 4 months, I've been on this mission to meet vibrationally the word that I put out for the year, which is holistic harmony. And
Mm, love that.
holistic harmony does require, though, to show up holistically.
And
And
harmoniously in your vibration.
and I don't want the audience to think this is all very esoteric talk, because this is stuff that we can then put into practice on a daily basis.
Yeah.
While the notion that becoming the better version of me may sound esoteric, becoming the better version of me in a relationship is something that we all are probably unconsciously practicing.
Right, right. And I think it's a lot of, and it's a give and take, right? Like this morning we had a huge conflict, and the way we navigate, the way we repair after conflicts, the way like, and we set a vision of what are like our deal breakers. Every 2 weeks we meet and we talk about what are some of the things that we learned this week about each other. What are some of the things that you want me to learn that I don't know about you? What are some of the things that we can improve on? Like those are conversations that we didn't have before, that we did when we were in the honeymoon phase, and we were, in the beginning phases of our marriage. But most couples don't do that because it's just like now we're together, we are so pulled by life and things outside of us that if we don't keep track of some of these basic simple things and have live intentionally, like how do we see ourselves and how do we get there, had a profound impact on how we show up in our relationships and repair and make those tiny small baby changes that leads to big huge changes over that compounds with time.
When you mentioned earlier um, that these small, tiny changes compound over time, reminds me of a book I've been ongoingly reading for the last several months,
Yeah.
Atomic Habits. And
Oh,
having,
I love that book. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the things he talks about. Yeah.
right. So essentially, this what you're articulating is having systems in place, not
100%.
only in other arts areas of your life, but within
Mhm.
your relationship, because you're
Mhm.
not treating it as an end goal, but it's a
Mhm.
daily practice.
Right. And we are also always like, how can we make our relationship better? Like, how can we get better? What can I improve on in myself? Like, I'm like that for myself. through that big change. And I don't expect him, but when I come from a place of, hey, I just bought this course on doing, vision exercises and doing all these things, and I'm interested and I want to be held accountable for this. Is this something that you'd be willing to do with me? Like, I gamify it now. When I was like, you need to do breath work with me, help me meet my hours. He was like, you do it. I'm not here for it. Like, this is not my cup of tea. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I would manifest, like, him and I do breath work together. I do this visualization activities, all these things that I teach my clients in terms of manifesting. And it's like, I if it's in the greatest good of everybody, somehow universe always rewards me. I don't know. The energy always somehow flows in the way of what I anticipate things happening. So I'm like, I see that we are, more connected, more together. Because I feel like when we have a vision of what we're working towards, we are working towards it. Otherwise, it's just like same things over and over, same patterns over and over. There's no growth, and it leads to frustration and resentment and a lot of disconnect over time. And I've seen that happen in marriages. I have never been modeled healthy marriages. So and there were some friends of mine that modeled really good, healthy marriages. And I always was like, I strive to be like that. And now since then, I'd made it my practice. Like, if I have a relationship and when I have it, this is what I want it to look like. And that vision changes once we meet, okay, we've met what we wanted. Now what next?
So it's continually expanding. It's a daily practice. And you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier as an exercise, and I wonder if you could go a little bit deeper into it for the audience. It sounded like the life wheel or the energy life wheel in the
Mhm.
very beginning, where you were talking
Mhm.
about the different
Mhm.
facets of our life. We all have different areas of what I call the focus. It could
Mm.
be spirituality, relationship, money.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through how, if a client came to you, let's
Yeah.
say that hypothesis is they are a pivoting entrepreneur as a
Mm.
solopreneur, and they are inundated with the level of overwhelm that comes with becoming a
Mm.
solopreneur.
Mm.
And how can they m- manage and protect the energy of their existing relationship?
Yeah. So, m- m- my fundamental basis for where life starts is what I've come to realize is like when I started taking care of myself and myself in 12 categories of life. All my relationships, my business, my everything else expanded automatically as a result of that. And where that started for me, because I was like, we can only change us, right? We can't change the people around us. We can be an embodiment of the change, but the change starts with us first, right? What feels familiar to our nervous system is what we keep doing over and over, even if it's like familiar hell. We keep doing it because unfamiliar heaven is like a tiger in front of our nervous system. Too, that's how it perceives it, right? So the way I started life is when I started this journey, it started with 12 categories, and it was like all different mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, business, and career, finance, your relationship with money and wealth consciousness, your partnership, your romantic life, parenting, service and contribution, um, your social and friendships, your hobbies and recreation. So it's like expansion in all areas of life, right? Like, which is essentially like Wheel of Life. But basically, so in order to not get so overwhelmed by that whole thing, for me, I just find that I like picking 3 or 4 different categories to really go deep with, and then there's some like a year, and then there's some categories that I feel like I'm good, and then I go into the next ones that are really like 2 or 3, like really need help, those kind of things. So that way it doesn't get too overwhelming because I found myself where I'm like, I'm gonna do all 12, and then I was just like burnt out of personal development, and I'm like, I don't want to spiritually bypass. I want to embody and show up as this person. So I was doing, so I picked those categories, and in those categories, we'd go deep into all the different things like the vision, the beliefs, and the actions. But the idea was that whatever category you want to pick out of the 12 that I listed, pick one that three or four that feels like, okay, right now when you're doing the wheel of life, or when you're doing the inventory of your life and where it is, because to me it's like, again, consciously living means that you are co-creating your life, as opposed to life happening to you based on your past cycles or your worries of the future. Like, I'm not available to that. To me it's like, where do I see myself this next 1 year from now, and where do I see myself 3 years from now, and what categories of my life need to be addressed right now for me to change and become the person that I'm manifesting to be. And manifesting is not just we get what we desire. Manifesting is we get who we are, who the unhealed and healed parts of us, right? So it requires us to go deep within and see, okay, where am I sabotaging myself all over the place? Where am I fearful of success? Where am I an imposter? Where am I doubting myself so much? Where am I being a perfectionist, right? And when I started looking into all of that, I started, like, at the end of the day, I had this journaling practice that I do. And I was like, how did my relationship, like this year, like I said, we are focusing on our health, our relationship, our aging well. Because I'm like, I am going to turn 45. Like, I promised myself when I turn 40 that this was going to be the best decade of my life, because prior to all the other decades were pretty rough. So this year, I'm like, I claim and declare that this is going to be the best decade of my life. So every year, I've been just working on that so much, and I'm going to turn 45, and I'm like, I am just aging timelessly and aging most vibrantly and with most amount of vitality that I've ever had. And that's the focus that I go in with. And that's one of the reasons why we started working on health. So it's like the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? Like, same thing with the relationship. We want to be more in love with each other, where we walk on the street and people are like, oh my gosh, can't even believe they've been married for 10 years. Like, I want to model that to my son. Same thing with the parenting. Like, I grew up with so much, like, you got 98. Oh, why didn't you get 100? And I'm like, oh my God, like, can we just celebrate 98? But no. So I want to model that to my 6 year old. And that's how I want to show up. So I'm like, we need to keep showing up as better parents. So parenting is something we're working on. And then I want to have time and um, wealth freedom. So that makes me focus on the business. And like, yeah, like you said, like I changed my niche from last time a little, or shifted my focus. But it came from entrepreneurship requires you to be flexible. We have to roll. We have to see what we have to do. We have to keep changing. We have to keep switching till we actually find something that just feels so easy and passionate about and so exciting about, but something that is in alignment with who we are at the time, right? So, yeah,
And the more you fine tune these facets of your
yeah,
career,
yeah,
life, relationships, the way I interpret that is that you're intentional, deliberate, and conscientious
yeah,
in how you respond to gauging the energy and then saying, you know what, now I'm ready to expand this part of my life in a very conscious way, which
100%.
feels really like you're, I hate to use the word control, but you're in control as opposed to
Yeah.
you feeling like you're the victim of.
100%. And I've lived as a victim in victim consciousness a lot of my life because of untreated depression and PTSD. So I no longer like, and because of healing all of that and having low self worth and low self esteem and all the things, uh, I no longer is available. I'm not available to that because I'm like, I have now I know from doing all the emotional intelligence and nervous system regulation body work that I no longer give my power away. I no longer react to life. I can respond and I'm in full control of my emotions, my world, my stories, my language, the way I show up, my embodiment, and nobody else can control that. So I can. And how do I want to show up with that level of power for myself and the people that I serve, my family, and the world around me?
And the way you mentioned a point also ties back to showing up around the world. And what I wanted to say to the audience, and maybe you can validate or
Yeah.
something like that, is that when we talk about the wheel of life and all the different 12 facets, I
Yeah.
mean, again, those focuses can be different for different people, although
Yeah.
generally we
Yeah.
all have the same type of areas of life.
Right.
But we do not necessarily have to say, when I say holistic harmony, that our energy goes into all 12 areas. Because
Right.
is may require different focus in what season of life you're in. instead,
100%.
right? And so you,
Yeah, and even within that, right? Like when I was like, I focus, like I said, our focus is like four different things. On any given day, I focus on two. Like, if we are good, then relationship is not something I sit and find myself thinking about all day long. Maybe it's something with Avik or my son, or maybe it's something related to parenting, or maybe my business needs more focus. These days, I'm just really working on setting the foundation of my business and you know, scaling it. So it's like it has been a focus. So I really find myself really allocating all my energy in that space. But there are some days that I like, even to me, like living in harmony to me means what would bring me, what feels the most ease. How can I bring the frequency of ease? Not easy. I like to work hard, but I don't like to. What I teach my son is like work smart, not hard. It's like if you can guess things done in the least amount of time with resources, then use those resources. Don't sit here and break your brain over it. So it's like there are certain things, like to me, I set an intention that I want a day that feels easy, that has a frequency of ease, that feels peaceful, that feels harmonious. So in any activity or things that I do, most of the time, I don't live as a monk, but I try to ask myself, like, and that's where my end of the day journaling comes in. It's like, what did I learn? Where was I not harmonious? Where can I do things differently? What can I learn from this day and from what I'm doing and showing up as? So I can't focus on all five activities because that feels very overwhelming. It's just hard. But focusing on three different things brings me joy, puts me in a place of gratefulness, puts me in this place of living in harmony. Why not?
and it's good that you brought up the term overwhelm, because I have to take a step back probably on a daily basis.
Ah,
I'll just say it to my audience that, I get overwhelmed easily, and
we all do. Yeah.
I daily have to take a conscious step back, like you have been.
Yeah.
The relationship facet is um, universal,
Yeah.
meaning
Yeah.
that facet of our life, unless
Yeah.
you're living in a cave,
Yeah.
your only relationship is with yourself. But I feel like we all have different types of relationships we have to,
100%. The
right?
relationship we have with our team, the relationships we have with our, parents, the relationship that we have with our family, like we are social creatures. We function in relationships, in connection, in love with each other, in harmony with each other. And it doesn't always work out like that, but there are boundaries for that.
Yeah. And those boundaries really are what kind of helps us, because you
Mhm.
mentioned in the earlier parts of the conversation that there are variety of relationships we all have, and we
Mhm.
cannot necessarily control how they behave
100%.
so
100%.
that we feel better.
Yeah.
We can respond to what energy we choose to put into it, and
Right.
how we choose to set our boundaries.
100%. 100%. Our energy is 100% our responsibility. And I truly believe like our energy is our currency. The more we relax, the more we know how to chill, the more we know how to access those higher vibrations of just living in peace, feeling in peace. I didn't know what that was like. As someone with high functioning anxiety, it was very hard for my nervous system to feel and be at peace. I always had to be doing something. And now I'm like, no, that is not, I'm not available. Doing breath work, doing meditation, doing, like movement and strength training and all the different things I do to just help my nervous system because I no longer choose to be available to burnout. I would rather rest and take breaks and schedule meditation breaks throughout the day and get ideas and have my sacral and creativity flowing because I truly believe that energy flows and we have all the creativity in us, but the inspiration doesn't download or come to us when we are tensed and always trying so hard and doing, and not sitting and taking time for that stillness.
That is a perfect wrap up. Gunjani, I couldn't have articulated that better. Just the you wrapped it all up. The different points, taking us
I know
from
what podcast I'm on.
you took us from your journey and what the catalyst for the of going down the path of relationship coaching, and then bringing us to the fact that you've now applied a lot of this in your own life. And we both agree that we're works in progress and we continually evolve as we regulate and evolve and regulate.
100%. Absolutely.
Now, the show notes will have it, but
Yes.
walk us through what someone needs to do to reach out to you and work with
Oh,
you.
thank you. So I am mostly available on Instagram. My handle is called Gunjani Patel Oza. And I truly love people find relationships, manifest good relationships, or if they're in relationship or conflict phase of relationship, just help them move to more secure, loving place. But that starts with dating yourself and dating yourself every day and having that level of commitment to yourself so you can show up in your relationships from that place. And that does require going through some rough things and healings and doing the work um before you can see that because of number of different reasons. But going back to the questions, yes, my email is gunjani at consciouslyliving.co. And I could be found on Instagram. DM me, call me, reach out to me, message me. I love to support you and hear from you. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer it.
And I've worked with you, Gunjani, in the past, working even with the modality of breath work, and that
Yeah.
alone is such a powerful
Uh,
method.
it has 100% changed my life. I also have ADHD, so it's like I had a hard time just sitting and meditating. So breath work was like a very good active meditation for me. And it really helped me be increase my emotional intelligence, be more not emotionally reacting to life all the time, but living in that, finding that harmony in my life, finding okay, being okay with just that stillness. But I had to train my nervous system to that. And it has truly helped me do that, just consciously breathing and using different techniques that can help you ground, that can help you energize, that can help you, release trauma, that can help you release stuck emotions from your body. So yeah, I love that tool and I recommend it to everybody. We all breathe, but we breathe 24,000 times a day. But unfortunately, we are only not conscious through most of those breaths. So I invite people to breathe intentionally, and that can do amazing things for your nervous system and how you show up to life.
I love that. Well, Gunjani, thank you, and
You're
I
so welcome.
love you back. I always
Ah, thank you. I love the show. I love the audience on the show, and I love having being here. So I can never turn down an offer when you ask me to be here. I love it. I love all of it. Thank you. And I just want to say thank you for having me here again and again. And I just celebrate this show's success over the years that I've seen it grow and expand with everything that you do. So thank you for doing everything that you do.
well, thank you. You're part of the journey of success,
Yeah.
so I truly
Yeah.
appreciate you,
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate our friendship. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.